So shake it out. Lots of energy. Oh, what?
I don't know.
What are you shaking?
I don't know. What are we shaking out?
Shake out your butt. Here, go. Oh.
I don't have coordination or rhythm. I'm just gonna sit. I'm just gonna sit.
Hello! Welcome back to What's the Safe Word? I'm Amp.
And I'm Stefan, Mr. Friendly 2018.
And today we are going to talk about censorship, sex trafficking, sex work, and more importantly, a bill that was just passed into law this last week called SESTA and FOSTA. It's this joint bill, and it is terrifying. But before we get into that and we unpack all of that, and there's a lot to unpack, so stick with us. Who are you and what do you do, Stefan?
My name's Stefan. I am the current Mr. Friendly in San Francisco, which is another title that represents MrFriendly.org, an organization that uses education and outreach to promote friendly ways of testing and HIV prevention.
And while organizations like Mr. Friendly are really important, it's bills and laws like these, the SESTA and this FOSTA, that make the internet a very scary place, because these bills are supposed to stop human trafficking and supposed to stop sex trafficking, but they do it in such a way that's not going to actually solve any problems.
And we're not saying sex trafficking is a good thing, but the way that SESTA and FOSTA has been created is oversweeping and is actually a very bad way of preventing human trafficking.
This bill is sweeping. It's majorly sweeping in its terminology and where it's grasping and going to try and regulate not only sex work, but censorship on the internet. What are they saying that this is supposed to do for us?
It's supposed to stop sex trafficking, and it's supposed to give victims a voice. In a way, it's just a big bait and switch. We're sold on the idea of preventing sex trafficking, but all we're getting is censorship.
SESTA, more like cest. This is a bad idea. But to understand why these are so important, we first have to talk about what human trafficking is, what sex work is, and why this is so crazy scary for censorship on the internet. Stefan, what is human trafficking?
So the United Nations defines human trafficking as the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by improper means for an improper purpose, including forced labor or sexual exploitation.
And it's important to understand what that is, because I know as myself, growing up as a teen, I never understood what human trafficking or sex trafficking was. It wasn't something that you talked about in school.
And we're not saying sex trafficking is a good thing, but the way that SESTA and FOSTA has been created is oversweeping and is actually a very bad way of preventing human trafficking. So the crux of the problem is that sex trafficking is not sex work. They're two completely distinct topics.
And sex work has been around for it's the longest profession. It's been around forever. What is sex work?
Profitable.
But the term itself is incredibly flexible, much like me. Are you flexible?
No, not at all. I need yoga.
Just gotta get your legs up over your face. Oh.
I'm better bent over.
Oh my God.
The term sex worker is all-inclusive, and it defines people that receive some sort of goods or services in return for their sexual affection.
And sex work can be a lot of things. It can be porn stars, it can be cam models, it can be people that do like phone sex.
Sex bloggers, people who sell their underwear on the internet.
It can be sex educators. It can be anyone talking about sex and somehow making money off that. So like podcasters, YouTubers. YouTube especially is gonna be affected by this shit. Stick with us, we're gonna get there. And sex workers are all over the internet, but more recently, a site called Backpage was seized, and this is really important for a lot of reasons.
What's Backpage, Amp?
Well, we're gonna get, you see the notes, we're gonna get there. Cut to the next slide. Are you still with us? Are you still awake? Hello? So sex work is not sex trafficking. Did you just wave to the people?
Let's see if they're awake.
Oh, okay. Hi. Sex work is not sex trafficking, and that's a very difficult concept for some people because politicians, they use it back and forth. They conflate one for the other. And that's apparent because of our own state senator here in California, Kamala Harris, actually took down Backpage with the help of her team.
And Backpage was a website that allowed users to post ads for sexual content, similar to what Craigslist would allow in their personal section, which they actually just shut down like a week or two ago.
Kamala stated openly to officials that she and others were taking down Backpage because it was knowingly facilitating human trafficking. which isn't the case. That's not what they were even charged for. They were charged for offering a site that allowed prostitution and for tax evasion, and that's what they were charged for. That's why they were seized. So the fact that human trafficking is brought into this at all is completely confusing and just wrong. And just another case of politicians trying to conflate all sex work as sex trafficking.
Or politicians trying to use like emotionally charged language to achieve their effect. Everybody's in favor of getting rid of sex trafficking. What most people don't realize is that a majority of sex work is consensual. However, politicians focus on a smaller, more vocal minority that's concerned around the trafficking aspect.
And politicians can't grasp that people actually want to do this consensually. Instead of a 9-to-5 job where they're sitting in front of a desk and they might be belittled and put down because they are a person of color or LGBT, they want to do sex work because it empowers them, it makes them feel strong, and make money doing it. So it turns out Kamala's been at this for a bit. She's actually tried to take down Backpage before, but she was unsuccessful because of what was called Section 230. What is Section 230?
Section 230 is from the Communications Decency Act, and it's the legislation that kind of creates what the internet is for us today. It allows platforms to not be liable for content that users post. So for example, Facebook would not be liable for one of its users posting like obscene or inflammatory content or copyrighted content.
Or if like YouTube has ISIS content on it, YouTube is not liable because they don't know that ISIS is using their platform. And Section 230 protects all of these websites and actually is the reason that sites like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Tumblr were able to grow and not be in trouble for users that are just stupid or ignorant of the stuff they're posting. So why was Kamala and her team able to take down Backpage? What happened to Section 230? Well, that's where we get to the real meat of the conversation.
Meat.
Which is SESTA and FOSTA. What is it? What are they? What are those? Remember that joke? So let's break down what SESTA and FOSTA are. First of which, SESTA. What is SESTA, Stefan?
SESTA is the Stop Enabling Sex Trafficking Act. It passed a while ago in the House. It wasn't great, but it had a lot of problematic elements to it.
And about the same time, FOSTA, or Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act. And this one was similar to SESTA, but it was a lot more aggressive and it had terminology that was incredibly scary. And they realized that SESTA, having already passed the House, was a good thing for them. So they amended parts of FOSTA to include SESTA. They took parts of SESTA in to make them seem more agreeable. They were almost like Rogue from X-Men, like touching. It's like if I'm FOSTA, I'm touching SESTA, I am absorbing the good parts, and now I am more powerful and I am able to get passed and signed by the president and put into law. And these two together, this SESTA-FOSTA, was a big package and a huge problem, which I'm not upset about a big package.
Yeah,
but
like, don't turn that down. It amended Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, and to put that into play, let's look at Craigslist. So anybody used to be able to post a personal ad on Craigslist, and Craigslist would not be liable, but SESTA changes that. And what's problematic is that if Craigslist is liable for all those ads, they're not going to want to risk placing any of them, so it just shuts down that part of the website. It censors the speech.
And that's before this even got passed. Worse than amending Section 230, according to a letter by the Department of Justice, it's actually going to make it harder to fight online sex trafficking.
It works retroactively, which means even if you're not currently doing this activity, you could still be liable if you posted on the past about it.
Next, it conflates sex work to sex trafficking, which is a dangerous slippery slope, as we mentioned before. So if you talk about it on a podcast, talk about it on YouTube, and they deem that it's inappropriate, you could be held liable for that. I actually have friends that have gone through their Twitter histories.
You have friends?
How dare you? That have gone through their Twitter histories and actually deleted every single nude or sex-related, sex work, porn, all of the things that the government might come after them for on their social media. And if that's not censorship at its finest, I don't know what is.
I don't have a witty comeback for that one.
There's no witty comeback needed. Next, it provides a way for the government to track, find, and prosecute anyone they think is assisting. The terminology is assisting trafficking, and we've already made it very clear that they find all sorts of sex work as sex trafficking. So if they think that you're assisting, they're going to take you down.
SESTA-FOSTA has 4 sites to shut down certain pages of communication in regards to sex trafficking and sex workers, whether that's a safe place for workers to talk about like abusive clients or educational websites that discuss these things. It's very gray in what is actually covered by this act.
This will actually silence more people than give voices. This is going to be putting more sex workers underground.
The EFF, which has labeled this a Frankenstein type of bill, has already said that it would cause platforms to be overly restrictive.
This is going to be overly restrictive on the content that you're able to produce, and these sites are going to start using bots to regulate what is posted and what is censored, which is terrifying because robots, they cannot take into consideration context. A number of anti-sex trafficking organizations have actually spoken to Congress before this was even signed, saying that this is going to make sex trafficking even harder to stop. It's going to force a dark web scenario on any of these traffickers and people that are actually doing sex work, and it's not going to make anyone's life any safer.
And finally, the language of the statute is incredibly broad. It's terrifying. It uses language such as promotes and facilitates, which brings liability from just sex trafficking to just about anything. And it's going to put all sites on the internet at risk.
Did they talk to actual sex workers and actual human rights activists and actual people who will be affected by this? Absolutely not. You know who they did talk to?
I don't know, Amp. Who?
Movie stars, because apparently they're experts on sex work and sex trafficking.
Thousands of children are raped every day.
I was not aware.
I had no idea.
I'm totally shocked and flabbergasted.
Why would you want to talk to actual sex workers or human rights organizations when you can talk about and listen to movie stars talking about sex trafficking and why it's so bad?
With people saying things monotone, looking sad into the camera.
What the
But provide no actual evidence as to why Section 230 is a bad thing.
It's outrageous.
It's horrifying.
In fact, Section 230 being repealed and changed actually benefits Hollywood.
And it's because Hollywood wants automatic filters on every single piece of content that goes on the internet.
And so they have more control over all of the content that we see every day.
It's all about the money.
So who was for this bill?
Some members of Congress, 21st Century Fox, and the Umbrella Corporation.
No, the Oracle Corporation.
Oh.
Not the Umbrella Corporation. However, and we know a thing about butts, the list for people against this bill was even larger.
The U.S. Department of Justice.
The ACLU.
The Electronic Frontier Foundation, or the EFF.
An army of sex workers and sex bloggers online. Hi.
Wikimedia Foundation, also known as Wikipedia. And a whole list of organizations that are too numerous to read.
Why is this important?
I don't know, Amp. Why?
God damn it.
While the lives of sex workers are very important, this is predominantly a First Amendment issue.
And this bill is a slippery slope in this regard because it's just so overreaching. Further, what makes this especially important and especially scary is that it's going to piggyback on a bunch of other laws, bills, and statements that Congress has made recently. First of which is net neutrality being repealed. For those of you living under a rock, net neutrality being repealed gives ISPs a way to charge more money and throttle the internet.
Porn has been labeled a public health crisis. While it's not law yet, legislators are setting the tone for this to be an issue to be taken up and for content to be censored.
And honestly, if you're voting on anything that's porn related or health related, I feel like you should have to turn in your internet search history. You know, be someone who doesn't use sex workers, Donald Trump. In order to vote on these kinds of things, we should hold our congressmen liable and accountable for the stuff that they actually use and the content that they personally watch themselves. Next, lawmakers have put into place a bill called the HTPA, and the TLDR on that, it's the Human Trafficking Prevention Act. And it is putting filters on internet devices or on websites that you actually have to pay the government money to view said websites. So even though human trafficking is in the name of the bill, it's just stopping people from looking at certain adult sites or certain porn sites.
And that's a common theme that we're seeing, is human trafficking being used to grab people's attention and to grab people's emotions, but not actually having an effect on human trafficking. And then there's issues closer to home that we see every day on our social media.
And that's censorship, whether it's shadow banning on Twitter, whether it's demonetization on YouTube, which is a huge issue some of us face every day. It's just this minor little censorship that keeps building up and up and up. It's these little building blocks that just keep building into this gigantic censorship wall.
And we're against a wall.
We are, we're against the wall. All walls. No, but tear that wall down. And this is where YouTube really comes into play for us. As a sex education channel talking about LGBTQ plus related issues, we've noticed recently that demonetization has been on the up and up. We rarely have videos that are approved for monetization and are advertiser friendly. Unfortunately, there's also something else that's been happening on YouTube that I've started calling shadow banning, where if you physically look for a channel that covers sex education, so our channel for instance, What's a Safe Word? If you search for that in the search bar on YouTube, you find some really odd results. It looks like everything that comes up for our channel is pixelated. Like the icons are all pixelated. The thumbnails have been intentionally taken down by YouTube so that there's no enticing reason for someone to click through. And when I reached out to a help person at YouTube and I explained the issue over and over again until one actual help person said, oh wait, I understand what you're saying. That's actually, that's not a bug, that's a feature. So channels like What's a Safe Word, channels like Sexplanations, channels like Lacey Green, all these people who talk about sex education are slowly being phased off of the website and harder to find via search features and not getting paid actual money. This is a huge issue. And as I've talked to more and more sex educators, they're getting an impression that something big is about to happen on YouTube to phase out sex education entirely.
This is the last What's the Safe Word ever.
Whoa, no. For now. I mean,
And when you shut down people's way of talking or shut down ways of education, it only adds to stigma, whether that's in regards to HIV, sex work,
sex education in general.
And at the very least, people should be able to have a conversation about these issues. Whether you agree with certain things or not, there should be a dialogue.
And that's why this issue is important. While not fun, while not funny to talk about, knowing what is happening behind the scenes for censorship is a big issue.
It's huge.
There's actually no H, it's huge.
Oh, it's huge.
Huge. So who's already been affected by this? Well, before the bill was even passed, we saw FetLife making announcements. FetLife is like a kinky Facebook, and they're saying they're not sure what's gonna happen to the website. We saw Craigslist Personals come down, we've seen Backpage seized, we even saw dating apps like Grindr and Scruff taking down profiles that had certain words around porn or sex work.
Long story short, the US is moving in a direction where platforms and service providers are afraid of what their users are gonna post. So they're gonna move to control and censor what users put.
Thereby, they're going to be shaping and choosing the narrative of certain acts or bills, and they're going to be able to dictate what we're able to talk about, what we're able to express, and actually silence those of us who have smaller voices from even existing on platforms.
And that will have a huge impact on communities that already are marginalized and don't have a voice.
Huge.
Huge. What's important to remember is that this act is not just about sex trafficking, even though that's in the name. It's about the way we communicate sex, and it's about free speech and censorship, which affects everybody.
If you're looking for ways to help with this situation with SESTA-FOSTA, share this episode with people who might not understand the issue. Call your politicians, let them know that you are still against this, even though it got passed. We'll leave some links down below to organizations that are fighting this, the ACLU, the FSC, the EFF. Go donate and support these organizations and use your voice, and don't be shut down by this censorship while you still can. Take a stance online, speak up, be seen, and share this information with people, because in the mortal words of Hamilton,
if you stand for nothing, you fall for everything.